Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. I'm Justin. I'll be your primary host tonight, and with me this evening are Cody and Brett. So, what do you two, or you just leave me in silence? I guess that works. What have you two been up to lately?
Trying to disappear. Um, I have been up to a handful of things actually. I am just about done. I just need one more session to finish up Assassin's Creed 2, which I've been playing forever. I did decide to 100% it, so I went back and found everything that I was missing from all of the little collectibles and memories and all that stuff. So I just have the last couple missions left to kill the final guy essentially, and then I think I'm done.
Okay.
So that's one thing I've been on. I've been doing some construction in my garage, putting some new shelves in, and I did feel like there was something else I wanted to mention today, but I'm trying to think of what it was. I forget now different podcasts here, but I had mentioned I started reading a graphic novel called Hunter Ninja Bear, which I said in the previous podcast I expected to be terrible because somebody just handed it at us, put it in our face when we were walking through C2E2 in Chicago, and it's really good.
Huh.
Oh my gosh, it's still so good. I'm pacing myself. I don't let myself read more than one or two little chapters a night because there's only 12.
Hmm.
But I think I'm on 7 or 9. I forget which one I left off on, but it's an interesting story. So
Is it a complete story or is it ongoing?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think there's 12 chapters in the graphic novel collection because, well, it's not a collection. I was mentioning in a previous podcast because the publishers decided to only put out collections of 12 instead of a monthly issue because they said people are in binge culture now. So they're going to do all 12 at once. And so it does say volume one, I think Provenance or something is the name of the collection. So there's probably plans to do more of them. I did a
Okay.
little backlog research on it because I was curious myself. And that's how I found out that they never put out monthly issues, but I can't find any mention of a second volume coming out yet, but apparently it's from 2023. It just came out. It was new when they put it in my hands, which I didn't realize either. I assumed some guy was giving away old crappy comics they had a million copies of or something. So I don't know. Maybe it was actually the people that put it together or the publishing company. I don't really know, but that's been pretty good too. And I also started a watch through of James Bond, which I started back at the first movie again, Doctor No, and I'm going to do some little mini episodes on reviewing some of those with some criteria that I have set up. And I've never watched all the Bond films, so I'm in the middle of part two or whatever you want to say from Russia with Love right now, the second movie, going chronological. And I know there's some that I've never seen. And I'm also going to try to include the non-Eon productions, which the wacky two, Casino Royale and the first Casino Royale, and then the Sean Connery one with the weird ass name like Never Say Never Again or something like that.
Okay.
Which is, whole thing. The whole Bond thing is an interesting thing. But anyway, that's me. What are you up to, Brett?
Well, yesterday we took the family and had a road trip. We went to the John Ball Zoo in Grand Rapids. That was a really good trip. They had a lantern festival going on at the time. That was the main thing that drew us in. But we went for the zoo proper as well. And yeah, it was a great day. Kids had a really good time. Saw a bunch of animals that I've never seen myself in person, so that was cool. And I I I did finally bite the bullet and I bought Diablo 4. I did the
Oh,
pre-purchase. So that the early access for pre-purchasing was available Thursday. Yeah, I think Thursday. And it fully releases on Tuesday. But I played 2 hours the other day, and I've been really enjoying it. It feels really good. Yeah, it's like this little nostalgia trip for all the hours I put in with Diablo 1 and 2. And yeah, so it's been fun. We binged through a show called The Watcher on Netflix, which my wife and I enjoyed. It kept us locked in pretty well. Cody, you seem to have had a different opinion on it, but
Did you say The Watcher?
The Watcher, yeah.
Oh, I thought you said The Witcher.
Oh, that's very different. Yeah.
Sorry, no, I don't know what The Watcher is. I thought you said you got great enjoyment out of The Witcher, and I was like, I don't know how that's possible.
That makes a lot more sense now.
I must have misread that. Sorry.
So, um, okay, so well, I'll do like a quick
Is
thing.
Henry
So
Cavill in it? Because it's probably terrible then.
no, it's not.
Super terrible. See what I did there?
No, this is so. There's this family that this guy he's making good money. They they're doing pretty well, but he's like kind of like, man, I just want to be like feel like I'm super rich. So he like goes and sees this house that's like this like $3 million house, and he like basically cashes in like every cent that he has available, like all his investments and stuff, and buys this house. Well, all this like weirdness starts happening like pretty quickly, where they start getting like these letters in the mail from this like anonymous person calling themselves the Watcher, and it's like this big mysterious like is the whole like neighborhood in on it, like what the hell's going on, and it's pretty tense throughout the whole series. The ending kind of left me wanting a bit, but we were like engaged in it the whole time. It was a pretty good ride. And then my wife mentioned to me today, apparently the second half of the last season of Manifest is available now.
What?
So,
That isn't even out yet?
no, it apparently it dropped Friday.
Oh my
So
God.
we are going to start binging that soon, I think. Close out that one.
Okay.
I didn't even know that that wasn't done yet. I'm still like I stopped like somewhere in that fourth season, and I didn't really count how many episodes I had left. I just assumed that was the end. Wow. Okay. I did want to throw out one more fun thing I've been doing, which is after about 3 years of development, the AEW wrestling game Fight Forever is coming out at the end of this month finally.
Nice.
And because it's a wrestling game, there is a roster, of course, of people that are included, which they've confirmed to be like at least 50, but maybe more. And they're going to have some downloadable people you can have past that. And I'm in enough groups on like Twitter and Facebook that are involved with the wrestling company that like watching people lose their shit over every little announcement that has been made has been really entertaining, because people are like, I can't believe so-and-so's not even in the game, and somebody else will be like, why'd they include that person? And it's just like, there's no way they can make everybody happy. And it's been like this slow drip of like, here's one more, here's one more, here's one more, not even that they're announcing, but people are like taking screen caps and stuff off YouTube videos and like playthroughs. And they're like, there's this person, he's there. So it's just been fun watching people lose their shit over that. So
it's like Smash Brothers all over again.
Yeah, basically true. It does look like there's some pretty fun stuff, though. I showed you guys the skateboard combat and some of the other things there. So
that was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. How about you, Justin? What have you been up to?
Well, coincidentally, I also got back from a road trip that also was to a zoo. 3 zoos, actually. So yeah, this past weekend, not this one that we're in, but the one before, was my wife's birthday. The big 4-0. So I decided I wanted to try and do something special for her. And there's 3 zoos in kind of a 100-mile radius, give or take, in Ohio.
Are they in a triangle shape?
We'll get to that. It was Columbus, Cincinnati, and Toledo. And all 3 of these zoos have cheetahs, and cheetahs are my wife's favorite animal. So I decided, okay, well, we can head down there for the better part of a week. We'll try to hit a zoo each day, and then head back up with a day to spare. It was a great experience. Minus the heat, it was like 85, 90 degrees every day we were down there, and that's a little too hot for my blood. But yeah, 2 of the zoos, Columbus and Cincinnati, do have cheetah encounters where you can actually just watch them tear off full tilt, and seeing a cheetah actually hit max speed it's really cool. But yeah, just fantastic zoos, especially Cincinnati and Columbus, really well landscaped. They treat the animals well. They had a lot on exhibits, and it was just a good time. We ate at some really nice restaurants. It was a long trip, but And we did also visit some people while we were down there, of course. My father and actually Matt, who is also a host on the show from time to time.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was good seeing them all again. It was a very packed 5 days, but it was a lot of fun. So that's the big thing that ended up happening in my life recently.
Did
And
the animals at the Toledo Zoo have a smoking problem?
We had a nice zoo once upon a time.
actually, the weird thing is, out of those three zoos, that wasn't the one in a sketchy neighborhood. That
Oh, okay.
was bizarrely, that was Cincinnati. Like we
Hmm.
had to go into this like sort of not quite rundown area, but a area that had seen better days. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And the zoo itself is phenomenal, but getting there, it was like, are we sure we're going the right way, kind of a thing. And
What kind of animals are we going to find here?
just rats, all rats.
But dressed up as other animals.
Yeah, he was just like in a trench coat, antlers on. It's like I'm totally a deer. Um, and that's actually in a weird roundabout way kind of brings us in the ballpark of today's topic. Because as longtime listeners might be able to ascertain, the fact that I'm hosting tonight indicates that we're probably going to be talking about something a little weird. And
Ecstasy and raves. Here we go.
classic or crap. No. So from time to time, we do like to do paranormal stuff here on Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. And today we are talking about a lesser known paranormal topic that I actually hadn't heard about until you brought it up about a week ago, Cody. The Bennington Triangle. Um, Now, this is, as you might guess from the name, it's a roughly triangular area where people go missing, or have gone missing, I should say. Similar to the Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon's Triangle, et cetera, and so on. This one, though, is on land, and that alone sets it a bit apart from, the sea faring kind of areas where ships and planes and things like that disappear. Um, Now, this is in Vermont. It's a triangular area that encompasses primarily the Green Mountain National Forest, a pretty sizable forest. I believe it's 26,000 acres, was it? Yes, 26,000 acres roughly. And it's a lot of it's wilderness, but it does also include certain key areas that will come into play as we talk about what happened here. Predominantly the town of Bennington and the town of Glastenbury. Um, Now, oddly enough, in most of my notes here, I'm not sure about you guys, but I have more notes about Glastonbury than I do about Bennington itself. So I'm going to kick off a little bit with that, unless one of you wanted to jump in with a few tidbits about Bennington. Um,
No,
okay,
go ahead.
okay. So Glastonbury, Vermont, was founded in 1761, so before the United States was even technically a country. But it wasn't settled until the 1800s because it was so remote, the forest was so thick, and it's just a matter of, if there were plenty of other areas more hospitable to people. It was primarily a logging town where it had a huge boom, and then a century later, in 1937, it was officially disorganized by the state of Vermont because the population had dropped off so precipitously when they had cut down enough of the trees in the area that the logging industry kind of fell apart. So that's the basics of that town, and the area in general it has weird things that go on. Author Joseph Citro, who coined the term Bennington Triangle, calls it the most haunted area of Vermont, and a lot of the weird goings on focus around a 5-year span, from 1945 to 1950. But before we get to those, I do want to talk a bit about the history of the area before that, like leading up to it, so that way we have a bit of bedrock to build off of for the weird stuff that also comes later.
Bedrock us.
All right. So, before it was settled by the colonists. The Native Americans in the area had they thought the area was cursed, particularly Glastenbury Mountain. They wouldn't go there except to bury their dead. They avoided it otherwise, pretty much from what I've been able to tell, across the board. They just would not go there except for burying or disposing of their dead.
I would love to ask the question, why why if it's cursed would you put your dead there?
I kind of wondered that too, and I looked through a lot of different sources for this, and I wasn't able to find a solid answer for that. Maybe it was the dead they didn't like, and I don't mean to be insensitive. If I really don't mean to offend anyone, but yeah, I don't have a solid explanation for this. But beyond just being cursed and weird things happening there, they also had, and this is really bizarre. The first bit of just completely out there lore about this place. They had legends of an enchanted man-eating stone that somehow wandered or traveled the mountain. That would be Glastenbury Mountain, and if anyone touched it or stepped on it, it would just swallow them whole. And for the life of me, I haven't seen any other like Native American folklore about anything quite like this. So it's a unique area just for that little bit of lore behind it.
That may be one of my favorite things about this entire case, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and we will touch again on this on that stone later, but it's just so bizarre, so unique, and it kind of sets the stage for the rest of the weirdness that happened in this area. And as soon as people, the colonists did start settling, they reported strange sounds and odors coming from the mountain primarily. I wasn't able to find out strange in what way. Pretty much every site I saw and every bit of research I did that referenced this just said strange sounds, strange odors,
It's
no
just
elaboration.
strange.
Yeah, just odd. But let us see here. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything because I do have some notes about the early. Okay, so beginning in the early 1800s, we get into something called the Bennington monster, which again was mentioned pretty much in this incident, maybe one or two others, and then never mentioned again. It doesn't come up. Where a stagecoach was traveling along a road during very heavy rain, driving rain that ended up washing out a section of the road. So they couldn't move any further. So the drivers, waiting, hoping the rain will let up so that they can proceed. And they start to, from the accounts I was able to find, the carriage started to be attacked, like just being hit from the side, rocked back and forth until it actually toppled over. Horses bolted, and the driver and the passengers, they saw what they described as a black hairy thing over 6 feet tall. That's really, they could only make out beyond that its eyes that were glaring down at them. And it knocked over the carriage, it stared at them for a while, and then ran off into the woods. It left behind footprints that were much larger than those you would see on a human being, at least most human beings, I would imagine. And it left them alone after that. That's pretty much all I've been able to find on that particular case. Any of you have anything that you saw on that particular stagecoach assault by monster that you might want to add?
Nothing new. I mean, the thing that I read was basically word for word what you just said. So,
okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that one. I don't think either.
Okay, so we've got curses, we've got man-eating stones, we've got possibly Bigfoot. There was also in the later 1860s sightings of a wild man or wild men in the woods, possibly the same entity that knocked over the stagecoach, possibly not, but disheveled wilderness dwelling person that apparently caused some sort of mischief, but I wasn't able to find a whole lot of details about that. There was 1892, the first real deadly occurrence here that I was able to find. A man named Henry McDowell killed another man named John Crowley in a scuffle and a disagreement, and I do believe he fled the scene when authorities caught him later on. He said there were voices in his head that told him to do it, and they would not leave him alone. So this is the first time that I've been able to find a definitive mention of someone being killed in the area, or meeting an untimely end. Otherwise, it's just like attacks, weird things being smelled or seen or heard from the mountain. Did any of you find anything around this time about anyone else disappearing or dying or anything?
Nothing else there, but I was, maybe we should throw out there for more context and background too. I don't know that it plays into any of the legends that I've found, but just to kind of world build a little bit too, the city of Bennington you had asked about earlier has a very large obelisk in the middle of the town, which is a very Bunker Hill style monument to the Battle of Bennington, which was a Revolutionary War battle that took place relatively close to there, it sounds like. But, so if you're mentioning people who died in the area, there is always the war angle of, soldiers or whatnot too, I suppose.
That is true. And I guess I was focusing on unusual or potentially supernatural deaths, but that is a very good point. Anytime there's war dead, there's in stories like this, there is always the possibility that someone's going to blame it on, whatever happens later on the unquiet dead, that sort of thing. So it's an angle I didn't see mentioned a whole lot in my research, but we can throw that out there because there's certainly no other shortage of angles that people took trying to explain some of this. 5 years later, there was a hunter named John Harper who his friends heard him crying out from the woods. I believe his exact words were, "I've been shot." They didn't find him right away. When they did, he was propped up against a tree, and his hunting gear was pretty much arrayed next to him, and no indication of who killed him, why, how, where they disappeared to. Probably a more mundane death compared to some of the other stuff we're going to talk about, but that's it up until the turn of the century, as far as I was able to find. So 19th century, we have already a litany of strange things going on, murders, things living in the woods, a rock that might eat you if you step off the path. And did we want to jump into the more noteworthy things that this area is known for, or were there anything else, any other elements you guys wanted to interject before we get to that?
I don't have anything else until like the 40s.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Okay, so that is the area that, or the era that this triangle is most famous for. So from 1945 to 1950, multiple people went missing, seemingly without a trace, seemingly without an explanation. The first of these was a 74-year-old man named Mitty Rivers, a native to the area, who was working as a hunting and fishing guide at the time. He was an experienced hunter. He, again, was native to the area, so he had lived there his whole life. He knew his way around. On the day in question, it was a day in November. He was hunting or guiding 4 companions on a hunting trip, and they were heading back home from the trip when he got a bit ahead of them. I've seen anywhere from just a stone's throw to about 100 yards ahead. The rest of his group thought, okay, well, he's just heading back early. We'll catch up to him, and they never did. He disappeared, seemingly within spitting distance of the rest of the people he was leading, an area he should have known like the back of his hand. They searched for him and ultimately found nothing but a single rifle shell of the same caliber as his gun sitting near a stream. And I've seen some accounts that say the shell was placed upright, which would be really creepy, but I can't substantiate that because some say it was just laying there, some say it was positioned upright, some there's no consensus on that. So this is the first case that really drew the attention of the authorities, or at least the attention of people who are researching this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you have anything on the Carl Herrick story?
um,
Because that predates that by a couple of years.
you are correct. I have that on a
43.
different page. 43. You're right. And this one isn't included in a lot of the lore. I do have something, but since you brought it up, do you want to take points on this particular case?
Oh, sure, why not?
Go for it.
Yeah, as you just said, like a lot of the everything that I've looked at, like people don't include this in this Bennington Triangle series of weirdness. Even though to me it's one of the weirder ones. So in 1943, November 1943, a man named Carl Herrick was out. I believe he said he was hunting with his cousin in the Glastenbury Mountain area, and so he got separated from his cousin, and then basically his cousin could not find him. After a bit of time, he went to the police, started a search for him. And let's see here. After a few days, it says they did find his body. His gun was nearby with no bullets discharged. There were reportedly many large footprints around his body. I didn't see anything as to whether or not they tried to investigate those or take prints or anything like that. But the autopsy determined that the cause of death was squeezing, in that his ribs had been broken and punctured his lungs. One of my favorite parts of the story, at least the source that I found, this is a quote from the source. It says, the townsfolk did not show any particular concern afterward. I would probably be concerned if someone had been found squeezed to death, but apparently in Bennington, this is normal.
Yeah,
and I think so. Like they don't include this in what we're about to get into deep here because a body was found, basically.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah,
it's not the only one, but it is unusual for this area for anyone to turn up. I should also point out, at least in the only thing I have to add to that is with the whole squeezing thing. That a wild animal isn't going to do that. Like a bear, it might kill you, it might like beat you to death, it might slash you, but it's not going to like wrap its arms around you and just break your ribs into your lungs.
Give you a quote bear hug.
Yeah, but I'm Tish. But yeah, so you'd think that the townsfolk would realize that and wonder at least be curious how this happened.
Yeah.
But yes, a good call. I did accidentally gloss over that one. So yeah, that does predate the main ones. I did also find a brief mention. I see here in 1942, a 13-year-old boy named Melvin Hills disappeared outside of Bennington, but I wasn't able to find anything more than that about his circumstances. So again, another footnote, which you think it would have more about it, but
was this guy hunting by himself?
With his cousin.
Yeah.
So
about 10 miles.
Okay.
About 10 miles outside of Glastonbury. I've got it in my notes here. Yeah.
3 days later, I was trying to think of like reasons your lungs would be crushed. Like the first thing that comes to my mind would be like an avalanche or something off this mountain, if it's even that big. But obviously, if it's 3 days later, I don't think that's going to be the case here. And I don't know what month of the year this is either. So
November is what it says here. Yeah,
and
it seems a little early.
Yeah, and the listeners at home might have noticed that several of these have taken place in November, and that is a commonality to these cases that we'll get to as we go on. So okay, we've talked about them. Midi Rivers, again, vanished without a trace. Nothing found but that shell by the stream. And then a year and a month later, so December of 1946. This is, I think, the most famous case. One moment, my cat is being a jerk. Stop that.
That's what they do. The cats.
we can edit this section out later.
I got to share this before Justin gets into this. I looked up Glastonbury Mountain on Google Maps just to see like the geography of this because I had meant to earlier and I never got around to it. And someone has given, out of 24 reviews, Glastonbury Mountain has all 5-star reviews except for one or 2 4 stars, a 3, a 2, and a few 1-star reviews.
Ooh.
And I was like, well, how do you give a mountain a 1-star review? So I started scrolling through these, and it looks like old Blue Lips gave it 1 star 5 years ago, and he said, and
Oh,
I
Blue
quote,
Lips.
"I went to this mountain and was never seen again. Something got me, 0 stars." And then the guy below him said, "Watch out for the creature, 1 star."
Oh, I love internet reviews.
Me too. Okay,
Oh, God.
now that I got that taken care of. So the most famous case, in December 1946, an 18-year-old college student named Paula Weldon, who was in her second year at Bennington College, actually. Um, so this is, as you can tell, a much younger person compared to Mitty Rivers. And she had just finished her second shift in working in the dining hall. Told her roommate, whose name I believe was Elizabeth Johnson, that she was going to go for a long walk. So she took her coat, which was red, bright, easy to see. Left at about 2:45 p.m. If the temperature was cold out there, but if she was just, but given that her coat was light, it indicated she wasn't intending to be gone all day. Just a long walk and then back. Um, so she ventured out. I do believe some of my research said she asked if initially other people if they wanted to join her. No one else was willing or able, so she went off on her own. About 15 minutes later, a truck driver named Lewis Knapp saw her along Route 67 and picked her up, asked her where she was going, and she said she was heading to the Long Trail on Route 9, which happened to be near where this guy lived. So he dropped her. He drove home, dropped her off at where he lived, and she presumably walked the rest of the way. Now, the Long Trail it lives up to its name. It's
Heyo.
it was built. It took 20 years to actually construct this through the wilderness from 1910 to 1930. Built by the Green Mountain Club. It was the first long distance trail in the USA, as far as I've been able to tell, and spans 273 miles from Massachusetts to the Canadian border. So it's a big long stretch of just hiking trail that one person is not going to be able to go in one stretch without taking a break somewhere along the way. So very long, a lot of places to get lost in, because that's a lot of wilderness to cover. So Lewis drops her off in his driveway. She continues the rest of the way to the trail. Around 3:45, Paula was seen by one Ernie Whitman, who was heading to the trail, and he warned her about the cold weather because he also saw she was wearing just kind of a lighter coat. As far as I've been able to tell, she either didn't respond or didn't respond with anything that was terribly memorable. And from that point, I think he was one of the last people to see her alive. To see her at all, I should say. She never came home, never came back to the dorm. The next morning, her roommates alerted the authorities that she had gone missing. And at this point, it's important to note that Vermont had no state police force. So any search that had to be organized by locals, including a lot of the college students themselves, who did what they could to comb the surrounding area. But it was a very amateurish search by everything I've been able to tell, to the point where Paula's father was so enraged by the lack of results, the lack of urgency, the lack of any sort of professionalism that he what's the word I'm looking for? Petitioned and drummed up enough outrage that this case was what formed the Vermont State Police, because they didn't want something like this to happen again. So they searched for as long as they could, until December 16th when the search was called off. I did find one passing mention to a waitress in Fall River, Massachusetts, who said she saw or she served food to someone matching Paula's description.
Hmm.
But that was by the time she reported it, the person was long gone, and that she may have been the last person to see Paula alive. But again, just seemed to vanish off the face of the earth.
There was another interesting tidbit that I had heard on this one, and that is that there was an elderly couple who was hiking the same trail, and they reported that Paula passed them on the trail and was roughly like 100 yards in front of them when she went like around a corner in the trail. When the couple gets to the corner, she's no longer there. She's like not in front of them on the trail anymore. So they were like the last people potentially to see her.
Fair enough. I forgot about that element, but yes, that is a good point, and it sort of dovetails with what happened to Mitty Rivers. Just got a little ahead of the group, and then was never seen again.
Mm.
And weird things like this happen. If you two are okay with me doing a brief bit of a tangent, because this actually kind of meshes with something that I personally witnessed about a month ago. So just to give you an idea of how common this sort of thing can be, losing sight of someone and then not knowing where the heck they went. So I work at a financial institution, and sometimes they have me working in the drive-through. And across the building from where we are is a what used to be an Office Max. It sold, or it went out of business a couple of years ago. Presumably it got sold to someone, but they haven't done much with it except repave the parking lot. And the parking lot's nice and abandoned and draws a lot of skateboarders. So I was back working the drive-through, and one of them showed up and was just sort of like doing, I get basic maneuvers. I am not a skateboarder. I don't know what they're called, but he was sort of like doing like a wavy back and forth kind of thing, I guess trying to get a feel for his board or whatever. And I was watching him do that for a while. Happened to see him, coming around for another lap of it. I look down like 2 or 3 seconds. I look back up, and he's not there. He did have a car, but that was like a good 30, 40 feet away. There was the building, but that was also a good at least 25 feet away and, in full view of where I was standing. And the only other thing between me and him was me and where he could have been was a sort of like dumpster that has been parked outside the building for a while now. And it wasn't terribly tall. Like, if you were standing on the other side of it, you'd see someone's head. And I watched, like, just in case he was like knelt down beside it, and I never saw him come out. So I'm not saying he disappeared off the face of the earth or anything, but I'm just saying weird stuff happens. Like he could have just all of a sudden accelerated like mad and gone off out of my field of view. But I don't know. Weird stuff happens out there, man.
He hit 88 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention the burning trail of his skateboard along the asphalt. But yeah, so weird stuff does occur. I don't have an explanation for that any more than I have an explanation for some of these.
Did you get you got the Fred Gadet coming yet, or are you going to the next one?
I was actually going to go to Tedford, James Tedford. So if you want to go to Fred, go for it.
Fred Gadet's another person I found on a website. He was supposedly a lumberjack and was also, by all accounts, one of the last people to see her as she was out running. This was a weird one, though, because it said he was interviewed by the police several times for reasons I'll get to in a second here, but supposedly he was in the middle of an argument with his girlfriend when she walked past them on the trail. And he and his girlfriend got in a fight, and he basically like stormed off on his girlfriend. And then based on a couple of the different accounts he gave to the police, either he went home by himself and just spent the night there, or he went to the next portion of the trail, which is where Weldon was headed on her walk. And he also was found lying to the police on a couple different occasions, 1946, and then again in 1952. He was listed as a person of interest with this case, and supposedly he told a few people that he knew within 100 feet where she was buried. which is just a really weird statement to make in any circumstance. But later he said he was just joking. Yeah. So, but they never found a body. They had no evidence that a crime had ever been committed, and there was no evidence essentially. So he just was passed off as like some dude who was talking, I guess.
Wow.
It's a weird statement to say, like, I could tell you within 100 feet where the body is. Like, does that, like, you forgot where you buried her, or you're just taking a shot in the dark, or like maybe you saw somebody, but that's a weird statement.
It really is. And like, why draw that kind of attention to yourself? I mean, because murder is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know. Idiots.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so that brings us to.
I was also going to mention. Sorry to interrupt again, but I was also going to mention, since you're also a lit person here, if you didn't see this in the notes, famous horror author Shirley Jackson lived in Bennington at the time of this happening, and this was her disappearance was the source of not one but two of her famous works.
I actually had not seen that.
Inspired by. So I forget the names of the Hang's Man, I think is called one, and I don't remember what the other one's called, but this would be the lady who did the lottery and the haunting of Hill House, etc. So
okay, cool,
good pedigree here.
Yeah, I did not see the part about her having lived in Bennington. That's kind of awesome. All right. So that brings us to the next of the main group of missing, and this initially seems like one of the most bizarre cases, and you'll see why in a moment. So a couple years go by until we get to 1949, and a man named James E. Tedford, 68, a war vet, who had returned home after fighting overseas to try and find his wife, only to find his wife was not home. Some accounts I've read say that everything looked like she had just stepped out, to the extent that there was like a half-eaten meal on the table that had just been left there, which was not the sort of thing that she, according to him, that she would have been in the habit of doing. And yeah, he came home to a completely empty house that seemed like it had been abandoned at the drop of a hat. By his account, they hadn't had any sort of bad relationship. They had kept in touch during the war. She hadn't run out on him, but she just wasn't there. No one seemed to know where she had gone. And this becomes important because since she disappeared and he had no one to really come home to, he eventually got to a point where he was lonely enough that he checked himself into a soldier's home in Bennington. He did have some family in the area, most notably in nearby. Well, I use the term nearby, but it was an 8-hour trip, a bus trip, that I should say. He does have some family in St. Albans, Vermont, which was a drive away but accessible. And this was in November of 1949. He had taken a trip down to visit them. And on his way back, it's normally an 8-hour trip, but the weather had gotten bad. The bus was delayed by snow, so it ended up taking significantly longer. And its route took it through the Green Mountain National Forest. And witnesses say that he was on the bus on the stop after the stop before Bennington, and when the bus got to Bennington, he was no longer there. His belongings were his briefcase, his boarding pass, just things he would have been carrying with him. But James Tedford himself was not. And before I elaborate more on that, did you two have anything you wanted to add on this particular case?
I mean, I would add that out of the ones that we're going to talk about tonight, this one I found the most discrepancies for in things that I researched. Like, just for example, one of the things that I saw was that he was this trip that he went to St. Albans. Is that it?
Yes.
To visit family was to visit his wife. which
Oh,
obviously would be very different from what you just talked
well,
about.
that's a
But
real Silent Hill 2 kind of thing.
yeah. So but I also like there was like some places said he was a World War One vet. Some said he was a World War Two vet.
I noticed
Um,
that too.
I I didn't look into it that far to see how old. Does it say how old he was?
He
He was 68 years old.
That's what I was thinking he was like elderly. So
yeah,
he must have been a World War One.
you think, unless he
Right.
joined
The
World War
age would
II. Yeah,
as a
really late.
65-year-old.
I mean, anything's
possible, I
possible.
guess.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, this case has like weird discrepancies for some reason in the things that I've tried to find.
I didn't find out the little note on his wife Pearl until pretty late into the research on this, but I was just from the site I had seen it. The reason I spit out the 68 so quick is because I was doing the math on like when his wife would have supposedly been missing when he found her, and I think according to what I got here, that would have been 1937 that she had disappeared. So that would again like extend our timeline, if that were true, by a few more years back again. So that's just kind of interesting from that. But yeah, it seemed to be a lot of discrepancies as far as who Pearl even was. Some sites said it was his wife, some said his daughter, some said, whatever. So maybe both. No site said both.
It's not Alabama, Cody.
Whoa.
Well, there goes another state off our list.
Yep, damn it, we're down to
but you bring up discrepancies, and I did find one that you two haven't mentioned, and it might in fact be the biggest one of the bunch. So the accounts, most sites I found that talked about all of this, they seem to imply that that the accounts they got from the other passengers and the driver were right after the fact. Like they tried to empty the bus and they're like, hey, this guy's stuff is still here. And at least one account I found suggests that's not the case at all. On, let's see, obscurevermont.com, which, granted, this is an article from 2015, but again, most things I've been able to find about this are from at least that far back, if not further. But this author claims that they didn't even know he was missing until a week to 2 weeks later, when the soldiers' home in Bennington actually started trying to reach out to family and other people who might have seen him, because he never showed back up. And they were wondering if he was intending to come back or not. And if that's true, then you've got 7 to 14 days of time for people to forget what they saw. Like, ask me who I saw come through the into the lobby of the bank a week ago. Did you see this guy, and did he leave? I'm probably not going to be able to tell you. And you're just gonna. I highly doubt they're going to pay that much attention to a sad old guy on a bus, to the point where his sudden disappearance would stick with them a week or 2 weeks later. So this one, I honestly think, is just a matter of he probably did get off the stop before and just went off somewhere else. And it's a matter, and the whole mystery surrounding it feels to me like it's a matter of the fallibility of memory and how unreliable eyewitness accounts can be sometimes.
This is like the one I found the most interesting of probably all of the disappearances. And it wasn't until the very end of my research here, I'm sending you guys a couple links if you didn't see these, but I happened to bump into these on Reddit of all places as I was poking around the internet, and these are clips from the local newspaper from the time period, both of which say the driver testified that he saw this guy get off at 8 p.m. on the night in question. So if that is true, then this is like I said, I really wanted this one to be true, but now my opinion's probably totally flipped on this one because of these clips here. Seeming to verify that was the case. I do like this third clip I just sent you, though. It says he was last reportedly seen in various places in Vermont, but the best leads seem to be around Brandon, Vermont. Several people said they saw a man answering his description, but the lead fizzled. But it says Tedford was wearing an army overcoat, a beret, and a gray suit when he disappeared. 5 feet tall, 5 inches, and 116 pounds. His health is reported as not being very good.
Huh. Yeah, I actually hadn't seen these particular clips, so this is interesting.
Mm-hmm. It does seem to change things quite a bit.
It does. But yeah, 90% of what I was able to find on this just regurgitated the whole, the passengers and the driver said that he was there after the second to last stop, and when they got to Bennington, he wasn't. And, I was only through really digging deep that I was able to find the discrepancy I did. And yeah, this one, on the surface, it is the most mysterious, the most bizarre of the main disappearances, but
It's a fantastic story if it's, but
it is. Yeah. In stark counterpoint to the one that follows, where this one, it's a bit more tragic, maybe just because of the age of the person involved, but it's also a lot less mysterious. So about a year later, October of 1950, Paul Jepson, age 8, who lived with his family on a farm near Glastenbury Mountain, pig farm, I might add. I've seen accounts saying he was just outside, some saying he was like in the back of their pickup truck, playing around. But regardless of exactly where he was, his mother went to go tend to the pigs that they were taking care of. And when she got back, he was gone. He was wearing also a bright red jacket, which you'll notice is becoming kind of a theme with some of these, and which should have made him easy to find in the lush greenery of the surrounding area if he'd wandered off or been taken, but nothing. Uh, Tracking dogs followed his scent to the highway, but no further. I've seen some accounts say that they followed him to the exact same spot where one of the other victims was last seen. I want to say probably Paula.
Yeah,
But
I think that was it. It was like the place where the trail crosses the main highway.
mhm,
The one thing I read said that was like the same spot.
mhm. But again, that could just be embellishment to try and make it spookier.
Yeah.
But either way, they followed him to the highway and his scent went cold, which suggests to me that someone picked him up and drove off with him. Um, but the creepier part of this comes from Paul's father, who said that his son had taken a quote unquote strange yen to the mountains over the past couple of days to the point where he would talk about nothing else. So his spin on things is that Paul wandered off towards the mountain because something was calling him there, or he felt a pull to go there. Um, More mundane explanations of this one are, well, again, he was kidnapped along the side of the road and never heard from again, which again is tragic. Um, to the slightly more outlandish that he was either killed by his family or he slipped and fell and the pigs ate him because pigs will eat anything. So there are some mundane explanations for this potentially. None of them are good, but they're a bit more plausible than he just vanished into thin air by the highway, I think.
Yeah, there was with this one, I'd heard and I think it's just like one that was completely made up like rumor things, but I'd read one thing that said people suspected that the parents had killed him and fed him to the pigs because
Oh
of
God.
some weird comment that the father had made, including he had been called to the mountain kind of talk.
Yeah.
But this also it's worth pointing out that it just the week before this incident, he had apparently run away from home and was found in New York, not city, but somewhere over the border into New York, like literally just a week before this event. So he had a history of running away.
Gotcha. I actually had not turned up that particular detail, so that does flesh things out a bit. Anything more on poor little Paul Jepson, or should we move on to the next case?
Now, I was actually still going down the rabbit hole here on on our buddy Tedford. I had
We can
misread the
backpedal.
one. I had misread the one newspaper because it said 58. I thought it said 48, and I was like, "Wait a second, that's before he disappeared." So I was trying to piece this together, but apparently it was like a follow-up news article from 9 years after the fact. It was kind of weird, but it took me a long time of skimming through this newspaper page through some bizarre glitch that probably is letting me look at this newspaper page because I don't have the subscription to this. But I did finally find the date to verify the date that's posted on the website. So
Okay.
does seem accurate. I don't know. No, I don't have anything else on the little kid. That one was just kind of
Um, okay, so that brings us to Frida Langer, 53, native of Somerset, Vermont.
Frida
Um,
Linger. Really? Come on. What kind of name is that? It's like a
well, you said you were watching the Bond movies, so
that's a good point. That's a
this
quick
one
comeback.
happened.
Nice job.
Thanks, I try. This one actually happened the same month, and I think this is probably where the authorities really started to take notice and take this a bit more seriously because a disappearance every year or so. I mean, there's a lot of wilderness out there. Things happen. Two in the same month is a bit more noteworthy. Um, so she, like some of the others, was an experienced hiker, an experienced outdoors woman. And she was in the Green Mountain National Forest and while hunting, disappeared. Near the Somerset Reservoir, I believe, is where she vanished. So she was out with her cousin, I believe, on this particular hunting trip, and they were. I don't remember if they were heading back at the time, but she slipped and fell
They
into a
were
stream.
heading out, according to
Out.
reports. Yeah.
Thank you. But during the transit, she slipped and fell into a stream, got her clothes all wet and muddy, and she decided, well, I don't want to spend the rest of the trip like this. I'm going to go back to the camp. I'm going to change, and I'll meet back up with you. So she headed on back and was never seen again. Never even made it to the camp by all. Well, I don't want to say was never seen again because I'm getting ahead of myself. But she never made it back to the camp. Her cousin eventually got worried or tired of waiting for her, depending on which account you want to follow, and went to the camp. No one there had seen her, so they searched, and nothing for 7 months. And this was on May 12th, 1951. And this sets this particular case apart from a lot of the other ones that we've talked about because she actually turned back up. Um, she was found 3.5 miles away in a clearing that had been extensively searched months earlier when they were combing the area for her. So the question then becomes, how did she get there? We should mention that her body was in a pretty bad state of decomposition, so they couldn't even tell how she died.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was animals that killed her, they probably would have just, or if she had died of exposure or fallen or whatever, and was, any animal that found her probably wouldn't just drag her to a clearing and leave her there. They would
She
have,
wouldn't still be there, you wouldn't think, if
right,
if a predator had found the body.
right. And the fact that it was, months later after certain, the search team had combed this area, and all of a sudden, boom, there she is. That's weird. It suggests that probably someone or something that isn't just a wild animal placed her there. That's the implication anyway. But again, this case has the distinction of being one of the few times when a person was actually found. The situation around her discovery again is really weird, but it does also make her an outlier compared to a lot of these other disappearances. And you'll by this point you probably notice there's not a whole lot that directly connects one case to another. People disappear and are found. People disappear from their properties. People disappear from the trails from a moving bus potentially. There's a lot of disparate elements to a lot of these that make it seem odd to me personally, at least. Let's see. I do have a few others that I was able to find in the same year. These aren't generally counted as among the big cases, I don't believe, but November 6th, so just a week or two later, a woman named Martha Jones vanished, potentially while out with her boyfriend in the woods. I was only able to find one mention of her. December 3rd, Frances Chrisman vanished on the way to visit her friend who only lived half a mile away. Wasn't able to find out anything more about her. So those are two other cases that just get glossed over in terms of the disappearances, especially around this time, and I don't know why. Maybe because there's not much more meat to them, but it does feel like they should at least be mentioned in terms of this area and people going missing.
There was another one that I found almost no information of, other than a very vague mention, but there was apparently a group of 3 hunters in the early 50s. I don't even have a date on it, but they apparently were hunting in the area around Glastenbury Mountain and all disappeared as well. Now, the reason why this isn't typically included in any of these stories is because they were not from the area, and because they weren't from the area, like a local search wasn't done.
Oh man,
basically, like I
These
guess
outsiders.
like it was kind of even like rumored, like it wasn't certain where they were even hunting. Like I said, I found very little evidence on this one other than like a single mention.
Damn, that's extreme. I mean, I've heard of not like drinking at the local bars, but I mean, if you go missing and the locals won't even bat an eyelash, that's pretty hardcore.
No, they disappeared, I assure you.
Don't look in the pig farm.
Yeah. Fattest pigs around.
Yeah. But yeah, aside from those, I mean, even with the scant evidence or mentioning we were able to find of some of those, you think they would be included simply because not a whole lot has happened since then in this area, as far as I've been able to tell. The only other things I've been able to see to find of any note whatsoever is that in 1984, a person, I wasn't able to find a name or a gender or anything, but a person saw a quote unquote flying silo hovering over the woods near Bennington. Nothing else about that. It was mentioned a couple of times, but nothing beyond that skeleton of a story.
Flying silo.
Yeah, flying silo, so like a UFO. So we might as well throw UFOs into the mix with the man-eating rock and Bigfoot and all the other crap.
Wasn't 1984 when they legalized marijuana in Vermont? Man, you see that silo up there? Flying, man.
Being piloted by the wild man. And the only other thing of note I've been able to see was to find since the 50s was in 2008. This is the most recent thing I've been able to find of anything of note that happened in this triangle. A musician named Robert Singley, 27 years old. He got lost in the area while he was just out hiking. He went up Bald Mountain, which is in the something not normally associated with disappearances, but is in the area. And the trail was only supposed to be about 3 miles to where he went. That's he estimates that's how far back his car was. And when he was leaving the mountain, he experienced a quote unquote dizzying confusion. The sky went black, and he was greatly disoriented. He walked back, he claims, the way he came, several miles further than he should have without seeing his car. Never found the car, at least on that initial trip. He was, again, still kind of delusional, dizzied and confused, so he found shelter, I believe, under a tree. The next day, when he was able to better orient himself, he was 6 or 7 miles away from where he should have been, on the other side of the ridge that he went up, near the peak of Glastenbury Mountain. And that is kind of the only thing that really ties that into the stuff we've seen before. And he claimed that the trail he was following to eventually get back looked entirely different from the one he had taken to get out there. But again, he didn't entirely go missing. He survived. He told his story firsthand. Is it connected? Is it related in any particular way? You tell me.
So is he saying he walked past his car?
He's saying
or further away from his car, you're saying?
Further away.
Okay.
So which to any objective outside observer, it suggests that even though he claimed he had to have taken the right trail back to where he came, he took a different trail that took him further out than he should have been. That's, to me, the one thing that makes sense. But the whole like dizzying confusion and the sky going black, that's, I guess, a little bit of a spooky paranormal thing, but that's the only thing I've been able to find that has happened there definitively in this century. So in a way, it kind of, I think we're about ready to probably talk about this as a whole. I would say,
because we're running long into the evening here, ladies and gents. We're going to stop after these cases we've just discussed in the Bennington Triangle. We'll come back next week with all our theories about each of these disappearances / potential murders, and also some bizarre theories that may have some credence to them. We'll see you next time on Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing.